You are looking live at Ian Cameron's home office in Dundas, Ontario, Canada. Ice Guys, SBR, NHL hockey playoff betting show on Sportsbook review. Ian Cameron alongside Andrew McInnes. With all due respect to the great Brent Musburger, I had to get that tagline in at least once doing one of these live shows. One of the best opening intro lines in all of sports broadcasting as far as I'm concerned. Hopefully Brent's doing well with his post-broadcasting endeavors. Looking forward to talking about the Stanley Cup playoffs as we enter the second round. We close the book on the first round, a first round that was absolutely phenomenal in terms of excitement. A ton of great games, a ton of great series, 18, count it, 18 overtime games in the first round of the Stanley Cup playoffs. Unprecedented amount of overtime games in just the very first round of the Stanley Cup playoffs. You couldn't have asked for anything better in terms of competitive quality, nail-biting, white-knuckle playoff hockey. It was just absolutely outstanding throughout the entire opening round of the Stanley Cup playoffs. Just great stuff. We're going to touch upon each of the first round series, preview the second round series. We have series prices. I'll get a couple of recommendations out on that. Andrew McInnes from the Maritime Provinces joining me as always. Andrew, how are you? How did you enjoy the first round?
I loved it, Ian, and you only just wish that the players could play that hard throughout the whole year and every game could be that close. I mean, like you mentioned, how many overtimes there were. I mean, I haven't been getting much sleep. I've been going to bed so late every night, just staying up on my toes, just watching every single game, especially as a Canadian. I've been watching every Oiler game and watch every Calgary Flames game as well. But lots of surprises, a lot of teams staying later in their series, and a lot of upsets to talk about. So I'm ready to rant here today, Ian. I'm pretty fired up, especially with the Blackhawks.
Yeah, the Blackhawks might be the story of the first round. And since you brought them up, we'll start there. Getting absolutely swept by the Nashville Predators in a stunning turn of events. And, you know, it's funny. I was at a buddy's place Saturday watching all the sports, including the hockey. And we talked about the Chicago Blackhawks being one of those teams that physically and emotionally, you have to invest so much into winning a Stanley Cup at playoff time. You've got to go through the grind. You've got to take the physical punishment. This has been 7 years now for the Chicago Blackhawks in a row of having to make that long playoff grind and just pour your heart and soul physically and emotionally into all of it. And it just didn't look to me like team-wide, especially from the leadership group of that Blackhawks team, that commitment was as strong this season. That's not to take anything away from Nashville. They played a great series. Their big players stepped up. Johansson had a great series. Forsberg was terrific. The back end was terrific. Ryan Ellis, Roman Josi, PK Subban all had a great series. Pekka Rinne in net. He's either a sieve or he's awesome. He was awesome. Pekka Rinne in this series, nothing at all to take away from Nashville. They were great, but Chicago didn't have that switch to flip in the terms of upping the ante, in terms of their intensity, their physical and emotional, just how much they were willing to give in both of those categories. I don't think they just had it in them this year. I think all the wear and tear of the past several years of being in the playoffs, making these long runs into June, really wore them down, and they just didn't have anything to give here in this series. Not to take anything away from Nashville, but I think Chicago's not being able to just totally just to give it their all to the extent that they have in years past is part of the equation in them getting swept. Every time they got down, the response was tepid at best from the Hawks.
Yeah. Well, one thing that I said on our very first show here at the NHL playoff show was that I'm a big fan of Corey Crawford. I think he's a great goalie. I really still do believe he is, and I think that he carried the Blackhawks through the playoffs numerous times. But they had goal scoring in. They could put the puck in the net. Right now, if you look at a stat line, I mean, they didn't score a goal for the first 2 games. And even when they did score, it was 1 or 2 goals. And it was only that top line. And that's what I've been talking about throughout this whole playoffs. You have to have depth. And when I say that, I mean, of course, the top players have to score, but you need to see everyone scoring. You need to see the power play clicking. You need to see all cylinders rolling. Goalie can play well. I mean, if you look at this Nashville Predators team, whether they won 5-0 or 3-0 or 3-2 or whatever the score, Ian, they had goaltending. They had defense playing defensive, but also scoring. Ryan Ellis and PK Subban, those are two dangerous players to have on your back end as blue liners. I mean, I'm a Montreal fan. Before, they used to always say PK used to be too offensive. He's proven he can be defensive. Of course, Forsberg, excellent season, regular season. We all wondered, was he going to be able to transition that into the playoffs? Yes, he did. So am I disappointed about the Chicago Blackhawks? Yes and no, because of course I thought that they were going to make it to the second round, but I thought that Nashville would fight. You need to do in playoffs. You need to be defensive in the net and stay well rounded. And honestly, Ian, they shut down the Blackhawks.
They absolutely did. I mean, 3 goals in 4 games. 3 goals in 4 games from that Chicago Blackhawks team in that series. Absolutely unthinkable, unimaginable by anyone. Anyone that tells me that they expected Chicago to score 3 goals in 4 games. Come on, get out of here. I don't believe you. I call baloney on that. You would not have thought that was going to happen before this series started. But credit to the Nashville Predators, now a force in the Western Conference playoffs. However, they're going to experience a lot greater pushback from their next opponent, I have a feeling, the St. Louis Blues in the second round. Speaking of the St. Louis Blues, they do away with Bruce Boudreau and the Minnesota Wild. Another rough early playoff exit for Bruce Boudreau. And again, Minnesota didn't play a terrible game whatsoever on Saturday, getting eliminated. But hey, Jake Allen was a stone wall in net for the Blues. Blues capitalized on their opportunities. Minnesota didn't do a good enough job capitalizing on their opportunities. Devin Dubnyk had moments in the series where he was okay, but he was basically outplayed by Jake Allen. And again, you had a very quiet series from some of these bigger guns for the Minnesota Wild. I mean, Zucker had the big tying goal on Saturday, but other than that, quiet series from him. I think Parise could have done a little bit more. The back end didn't really contribute as much offensively after they had done such a good job contributing to the output for the Minnesota Wild during the regular season. It was just a collective great effort from the St. Louis Blues and Jake Allen in particular. Without Jake Allen playing at the level he did, this is a much closer series. This could go 6 or 7, and maybe even Minnesota wins it. Allen was that good. He's going to have to be good again because I think they're facing a confident, surging Nashville Predators team right now that's going to be a much taller order, I think, for the St. Louis Blues. But credit to them. They take out the Minnesota Wild, and the Bruce Boudreau nightmares, spring nightmares, continue.
And Ian, you mentioned in that elimination game, the Minnesota Wild were in that game. Oftentimes I talk about the mental toughness and how star goaltenders or goaltenders that are playing well like Jake Allen can really mentally drain you. And, you know, Ian, I really do believe that happened. I mean, if you look at that last game, they're just firing pucks at the net. I mean, sometimes when you're having trouble scoring, you kind of just, your coach tells you, just keep firing pucks at the net, do whatever you can to kind of get in the head of the goalie. I mean, look at Henrik Lundqvist. When he's on fire, you have to just get a squeaker in, or just get a tap in goal, just get something to get him off his game. But St. Louis Blues, I think they're in for a lot tougher of a second round. This is going to be a little more of a heavy matchup for them. That should be a great series, Ian. I'm looking forward to that big time. But I think this is one of those things where you can't blame Devin Dubnyk at all, because just the production of the Stars just wasn't there for the Minnesota Wild. And hats off to the St. Louis Blues, ready to play, and their goalie gave them confidence, and they ran with it.
Yeah, they sure did. I mean, it was a very good series for the St. Louis Blues. I mean, you saw some of their big guns really step up. Stastny, a big goal. Tarasenko in the latter stages of that series. So the Blues and the Predators going to be a great Central Division series. We'll break that one down in a few minutes. How about my Edmonton Oilers taking care of the San Jose Sharks out west? Series price winner before the series began. We took Edmonton. We recommended Edmonton as a series price recommendation. They take down the San Jose Sharks in 6 games. And you know what? We've got a great Las Vegas show, Las Vegas Sports Line they do out there. Dave Koken, Matt Human, Scott Spreitzer, 3 great guys that do that show. And every Monday they do a segment called The Clown of the Weekend. And, you know, they talk about someone that did something stupid, said something stupid, acted like an idiot on the court, the field, whatever, the ice. And they just basically call them out for it. And I haven't ever called this guy out because I think he's a very good head coach, but I got to call Pete DeBoer out here a little bit for the San Jose Sharks. What is Paul Martin doing out on the ice so many times against Dreisaitl's and McDavid as much as he is? I mean, it was absolutely dreadful seeing him trying to match up from a speed perspective against these two guys. I mean, Paul Martin's now in the tail end of his career, late 30s in age. What is he doing out there all the time when Draisaitl and McDavid are on the ice? I mean, that's absolutely dreadful. He got gashed in that Draisaitl breakaway goal, that 1-0 goal Saturday. Paul Martin was on the ice for that. He can't win a foot race situation. He is a snail now in terms of his ability to skate, especially against these speedy Edmonton forwards. It was not a good matchup whatsoever. I understand Pete DeBoer's loyal to the guy. He's a veteran in the league. He's been a good defenseman all these years, but you got to make an adjustment at some point based on the matchup. This is a bad matchup, bad team for Paul Martin to be facing. He's not able to match up speed-wise with a Connor McDavid. He's not able to match up speed-wise with the Leon Draisaitl. The fact that he was played so many times when those two guys were on the ice was a bad call by Pete DeBoer. Didn't make enough adjustment there. And this is a guy I like. He's a very good head coach. He's intelligent. He's smart. He's a nice guy, very nice guy. I remember what he did with New Jersey, how he brought that New Jersey team years ago to the Cup final against LA. I'm still surprised, but he did a hell of a job that year. Got San Jose into the Cup final last year against Pittsburgh. He's a good coach. He knows what he's doing most nights, but this was not a good night for Peter DeBoer. And how, if you're the San Jose Sharks, do you allow two guys in 2 minutes at the beginning of the second period in a game with your season on the line, facing elimination to get behind your defense for breakaway goals? Leon Draisaitl in the first minute of the second period. It was Anton Slepyshev right after that gave Edmonton the 2-0 lead. That's absolutely inexcusable. Abysmal stuff from the San Jose Sharks in an elimination game on home ice that you have to win that game. And you have last line change, too, at home. How do you have these screw-ups? How do you have these mental blunders that you have two of the better players on the Oilers with speed coming through you and beating your defense, getting behind you in a game you've got to win? Absolutely abysmal job by San Jose. And that 2-minute sequence in the second period really cost them that game, cost them that series. I know they made a push late, made it 2-1. Really tried to tie it, made a good surge there, but those two goals broke their back. And I said at that point, it's going to be a tough road now for San Jose to come back and win this game. And sure enough, Connor McDavid, an incredible individual effort on that empty net goal, if anyone saw it, to put it away and give the Oilers a 3-1 win for that game, taking care of the series. They're now going to face the absolutely rolling Anaheim Ducks. But I will remind people, Anaheim won every game against Calgary close. Even though Calgary did not play anywhere close to their best, Anaheim still had to sweat and win a lot of close games in that series. It was not like they completely pummeled Calgary, even though they swept them. So that should be a really, really competitive and great series. Edmonton-Anaheim coming up in the second round.
Well, Ian, you really touched on it to start off in our preview show, and I fully agreed with you. This team wasn't a team to be messed with, in my opinion. And this is a team that's more ready than a lot of people thought they were. At the start of this series, head coach Todd McClellan was asked what he really thought about the inexperience of this team. You remember his answer? He's just like saying, we're not experienced, but I think that's going to help us because we don't know what to expect, but it's just going to be another game for us. And coming into this playoffs, we had Zach Kassian starting off being one of the best players for that team. All of a sudden, we have Connor McDavid not scoring. All of a sudden, Leon Draisaitl is getting in penalty trouble. But throughout this series, no matter what was happening, I really just felt the Edmonton Oilers had that edge. I mean, for moments, you'd see the San Sharks really gathering possession, circling the puck in the Edmonton Oilers' end. But other than that, I really just see every dying minute of that game, the Edmonton Oilers are on the rush, making a dangerous play. So all in all, really, if you have Connor McDavid not really scoring too much and laying big body checks, I mean, if you see the hit that he laid in that game when they came back to win in overtime, that's what you want out of your captain. And I'm not going to hype that up too much because obviously it's just one hit. But, like a lot of people say, that's what you want to see. If he's not scoring goals, he has to do other stuff. And how about David Desharnais? Come on, David Desharnais, of all people, he gets the OT winner. I mean, not see that coming at all, but good for him. And it just goes to show that's what this team needs. And that's what's going to make them continue to go far and hopefully hit your future bet for you, Ian, is that everyone's going to have to come to play. And, the best part about this Oilers team right now is it seems like anybody can go on the ice and get something established. They get the puck in the neutral zone. They cross that blue line, and it's dangerous. Doesn't matter who's on there, Ian. It's dangerous. So I think the best thing that this Oilers team did was scratch that 7-0 loss, because it only meant one loss, even though it was 7-0. Came back right away and fought hard. That overtime win was a hard win, and that didn't come easy. They had to come back and get that OT win. But then again, I think you can agree with me. I think I saw you tweet about it. The Oilers dominated throughout that whole overtime. They had the momentum going into the overtime. So looking forward to this next series, I mean, again, we're talking about a little bit more of a veteran type team of the Ducks, facing off against still a younger team of the Edmonton Oilers.
Yeah, they're going to be tested much more at Anaheim in this series from a speed and skill perspective. These defensemen are going to have to turn and grab loose pucks now against Edmonton, something they weren't forced to do as much against Calgary. It's going to be a much taller order for Anaheim, in my opinion. I think the Oilers are live in this series. I think it's going to be a tough one for the Oilers to win, no question, the way Anaheim's played. And, of course, John Gibson in net has been very, very solid for them as well. But let's not forget the Caledonia kid, Cam Talbot. What a first round he had in net. The Oilers finally have a legitimate goalie, a guy that's playing like a number one goalie, that is playing with the confidence of a number one goalie, and it's going a long way for this Oilers team. Should be a fantastic series coming up against the Anaheim Ducks. And the last series in the West, again, Anaheim-Calgary. I don't have much more to add to this about this series. I mean, Anaheim was just, Calgary made too many gaffes, too many mistakes, took too many penalties, and got below average goaltending, let's be honest, from Brian Elliott. That was not good enough from him in that series. Chad Johnson, is not a guy that played well down the stretch. He tried to keep Calgary in it in that last game, but Anaheim was the better team throughout. They won a lot of close games. They didn't exactly crush Calgary, and with a few bounces and better goaltending, Calgary's probably still very much alive to win that series. But Anaheim had the better goaltending, didn't make as many mistakes, capitalized more on their chances, had the better power play, stayed out of the box less than Calgary did. That was the difference.
No, absolutely. And this is a series that was the clear definition of undisciplined. I mean, you're talking about a playoff series. I'd be surprised at all if this series led in penalty minutes. I mean, this Calgary Flames team is a young team, and they have to do whatever they can to stay out of the box and stay in the opposing team's zone. Kind of the opposite happened to them, and that's what really hurt them the most. You can't win, Ian, off just breakaways and just getting up the ice and firing a shot. Gibson was playing way too well, and they can't really rely on themselves to just get those breaks. They have to spend time in the end of the other team, and on countless amounts of time, they really have to bring the puck out to the point, swing it around, look for a good shot. Because right now it seemed like every shot they were firing was going right at the chest. And of course, with Brian Elliott not playing too well, it didn't really help them that they weren't scoring either. So looking at them, they kind of got just completely dominated. You said that you think with a little bit of better goaltending, Calgary would still be in it. The veteran leadership of this Anaheim team, they came to play in the playoffs. From the games that I watched, it just seemed like they were a little bit more dialed in, Ian. Question here from one of the viewers right now. Who do you think is the best goaltender remaining in the playoffs?
Yeah, I was just noticing that. We got a couple good questions. By all means, keep sending them in. We'll try to answer as many as we can. What is the best netminder left in the playoffs? That's a real good one. You know what? After the way he played in the last two games of that Leaf Capitals series, Braden Holtby's up there for me. He really got better in the last couple of games. He was having an average series before that. He's up there. Pekka Rinne, I think, had the best first round of anybody. I can't call him the best netminder left in the playoffs, though, because he's got to keep doing it. I got to see it for another series from him. Henrik Lundqvist had a phenomenal series, but again, he had an up and down regular season. So there's a case to be made for a bunch of guys. But the guy that had a tremendous regular season, he didn't have a great first few games in that Toronto-Washington series, which is actually what we're going to get to coming up right now. I'm still going to say Braden Holtby. I'm still going to say Braden Holtby at this stage. He really, in Game 5 and Game 6 of that Leaf Capital series, he was phenomenal. And he's the reason why Capitals were finally able to take hold and win the last two games and clinch that series. And the other question, do the Preds have enough to win it all? They have it with the forwards. They've got it with the defense. They've got great team chemistry, continuity, good team speed. It's all about the Pekka Rinne factor for me. Is what he did against Chicago a fluke? Or is it something that can continue where he put up that stone wall, that brick wall in net against Chicago? If he can keep it going against St. Louis and moving forward, then yeah, Nashville's definitely live to win the West. And hell, even a cup. I mean, they do have the talent up front. They do have the defense that's deep. I like that. A deep defense, a goalie playing well. Nashville had that in the first round against Chicago. Are they going to have it against St. Louis? If they do, and Rinne doesn't bobble and go back to, mediocre Pekka Rinne, then absolutely, to answer your question, yes, they do have enough to win it all. No question about it. Washington, Toronto, what an effort by the Leafs. Hats off. We got to give them a round of applause. I mean, just a phenomenal job for the Toronto Maple Leafs here. Losing in 6 games, no shame in it whatsoever. Unbelievable series. 5 of the 6 games go to overtime. Every game a 1-goal hockey game. It was just an incredible series. Washington had to sweat, bleed, claw, scratch their way to winning that series, and they had a lot of energy taken out of them for the Pittsburgh Penguins here coming up here in this second round upcoming, as it'll be the Capitals and Penguins. And by the way, I've got a rant about this coming up here right now. This is an absolute absurdity that Washington and Pittsburgh are playing in the second round. It is absolutely ridiculous. This playoff format's got to be tweaked. I don't know about going back to 1 versus 8 seed in each conference like it was for such a long time. Maybe you should go back to that, but even then, some way you got to tweak it so that this does not happen. Pittsburgh and Washington has to be in the conference final. There should be no way these two teams face each other until an Eastern Conference final. They're the top 2 teams in the Eastern Conference in points this season. It makes you look ridiculous that they're playing in the second round. That's absolutely ridiculous. That cannot happen, in my opinion. The league's got to do something to tweak this playoff format. Washington and Pittsburgh should not be a second round series, just like Pittsburgh-Columbus should not have been a first round series. But hey, I've been screaming about this for years. I've been just pounding my head against the wall for years about this playoff format. It hasn't done me any damn good. It's probably not going to do me any good after this little rant. So we just move on. We accept it. Hey, we got Washington and Pittsburgh in the second round. It shouldn't be. It should be a conference final. But hey, it's still going to be a great series.
Yeah, that cracks me up, Ian, and I fully agree. Not after what you saw the Columbus Blue Jackets really give you, but I think it's so true. How could the Columbus Blue Jackets play the Pittsburgh Penguins in the first round? And how are the Washington Capitals playing the Pittsburgh Penguins second round? It just beats the shit out of me. I don't see how it could really happen at all, especially these 2 all-star teams. And Ian, I have to bring it up. I have to mention it. Alexander Ovechkin versus Sidney Crosby. I'm not going to be one to say that I believe in the big rivalry, but there definitely is something there. First, I will just say hats off to Toronto Maple Leafs. I mean, great series for them. They worked really hard, and I think that next year it's only better. It's only going to get better for them. They'll move on. But like Babcock said, this was their year they're in. Next year, other teams will get better as well. But heading into the next series, we've got 2 high-scoring teams, 2 goalies that sort of got hot, but 2 teams that can score quite a bit. So I think I wouldn't be too wrong to mention the over in this game, in this series, really. And I'm wondering what even the totals into this series. If Sidney Crosby, Gensel, and Malkin, if they can keep playing the way they're playing, I don't really see any team stopping this Pittsburgh Penguins team. I'm not going to discredit the Toronto Maple Leafs here, guys, but if the Capitals had that much trouble against this young Leafs team, they cycled the puck well, but they're no Pittsburgh Penguins, all right, Ian. They're not exactly what the Pittsburgh Penguins have to offer. And I think that Washington's going to have to be a lot better of a defensive team, and not just rely on Braden Holtby. They're going to have to actually play defense and then move to offense if they're going to have any chance against the Pittsburgh Penguins here.
Yeah, and you know what? I'll give the Washington big guns credit for the Game 6 performance against Toronto. They finally all showed up. Kuznetsov, even though he didn't score, he had his best game of the series. Ovechkin was much more noticeable. Justin Williams had a great series. Oshie was fantastic. Oshie blocking a ton of shots, too. I was so impressed with the commitment on his end defensively when he didn't have the puck. So it was a much better game for the Washington big guns, no doubt, in that series. It was funny, though, to see people saying that Alex Ovechkin, after I believe it was Game 4, when Washington won that game, how he was a leader of men. Some NHL Network analyst, I was flipping through the television, was saying that leader of men for what? For what? The one thing he did in that game was just stand at the hash marks, which he does 90% of the game, waiting for that one-time blast, and that was his one goal. That was his one play in that game. He had to be a lot better than that, but he was a lot better last night for sure. And again, going back to this playoff format, it's just frustrating to see that these are clearly, in turn, a great rivalry. Two of the best teams, if not the two best teams in the Eastern Conference now for the last 2 years, that they're playing in the second round, not the conference final. And the reason they went to this divisional format, they wanted divisional rounds, they wanted this bracket type format like the NCAA tournament, because we think it's going to increase viewership, get people more excited for the NHL Stanley Cup playoffs, being able to fill out brackets. Hey, here's a news flash, Gary Bettman. Here's a news flash. You get 1/10 of the viewership of the NCAA tournament. Your first round ratings in the Stanley Cup playoffs this year in the States, the lowest they've been in a very, very long time. The brackets are doing squat, jack shit to improve your ratings, to improve interest in the Stanley Cup playoffs south of the border. So throw this bracket garbage away. It's not doing anything for improving the product, for getting people excited about the playoffs. You know what? The amount of people watching the Stanley Cup playoffs in the United States compared to March Madness, with this bracket idea of yours, you can put the amount of people in a thimble. That is how little it is compared to the NCAA tournament. I mean, you got to do something. If that's the reason you've changed formats to go to this divisional format, not having it reseeded, having it in a situation where it just goes through the division, top two teams in the conference, to hell with how many points they add, they can play in a second round. If the reason you did that is because you think filling out some dopey brackets are going to bring some extra viewers and extra interest, you need your head examined. But that's not the first time I've said that about Gary freaking Bettman. On we go. Next series, we've got let's see. Let's do Rangers Montreal next, as I'm getting excited here, getting all ramped up. Rangers Montreal. Hey, it's Montreal again in the playoffs, doing what they've done so many years in the past. Can't put a puck in the freaking ocean. They can't. And you know what's funny? People loved the Claude Julien hiring after they got rid of Michel Therrien. I was not crazy about it, and here's why. Claude Julien teams with the Boston Bruins the last couple of years, abysmal offensively, abysmal on the power play. How is Claude Julien going to come in here and improve this team offensively? All his philosophy is get back, get back, get back. No, don't push the puck forward. Don't be aggressive. Don't pinch the defenseman when you have to. Just get back, get back, get back, get back, get back, get back, get back. That is Claude Julien in a nutshell. He's way too stringent on the defensive end of the ice. I appreciate the effort, the attention to detail that you have to have defensively in the Stanley Cup playoffs. Obviously, you start with winning games with your goaltender and your blue line and being able to keep them from scoring. But at some point, you've got to take the leash off the dog, so to speak, and let them roam. My goodness, the Montreal Canadiens, it was just nails on a chalkboard trying to see them just have a little thrust of offense in that series against the New York Rangers. Just getting the puck inside the blue line at times was a chore for this Montreal Canadiens team against the New York Rangers. Max Pacioretty, a complete disaster in this series. He had to be a hell of a lot better than he was. I don't know if it's a product of the system or a product where he just didn't produce, had to play better, didn't get to the tougher areas of the ice to be able to score goals, but he was awful in that series. If you see the great memes that are floating around on Twitter, great picture of Max Pacioretty hanging out on a patio and saying Max Patio ready. It's absolutely fantastic. He is patio ready now. His season's over. And so is the Montreal Canadiens season. But again, they are wasting the prime years of Carey Price's hockey life right now, with an inept offense, with a pathetic power play, a pathetic offense that can't score goals half the time at any point, really, in the series against the New York Rangers. They're wasting this brilliant goaltender who has given this team a chance time and time again to win games, and they just don't give him enough run support at all, so to speak. So again, some similar refrain for Montreal. Solid enough defensively. Shea Weber had a great series. The defense was pretty solid. Carey Price was pretty solid, but they couldn't score. And I will say this for Carey Price, solid was he. Henrik Lundqvist was just a little bit better. He was spectacular, and it was hilarious hearing all these people say midway through the season, I think it was January, when Henrik Lundqvist was really going through some struggles, hearing them talk about he's washed up, he's over the hill, he's lost it, he doesn't have it anymore. Looks like he's still got a little something based on the way he played in that first round against the Montreal Canadiens. So credit to the Rangers. Shame on the Canadiens. You can't put the puck in the ocean once again, and it cost you another playoff series.
Oh, yeah, and it was a hard series to be a Montreal Canadiens fan. I'm telling you, I am flat out embarrassed. What is this scoring production we're seeing, Ian? This is nothing. They cannot put the puck in the net. I mean, you're using these expressions, and I could sit here and get mad about it, but it's true. Everything you just said about my favorite NHL team is true, and it's flat out embarrassing. You have a goalie like Henrik Lundqvist, and the kind of shots they're getting on net, you expect to score off. They're literally shooting it right at his chest, and every kind of shot from the point has that flutter to it that it's just slowly going. I mean, every single shot they pretty much took at Henrik Lundqvist in that last game wasn't going to be effective. And when you have Thomas Plekanec as your second line center, that's one of the reasons you don't have scoring production. It doesn't make any sense. Marc Bergevin at the trade deadline said the scorers weren't there. What does that mean? They were looking for Matt Duchene at one point. They couldn't get him. He cost too much. Looking for a couple other all-stars. So what do? Grinders, third line grinders. Picked up Steve Ott. What's he going to do? Pick up Steve Ott. Why not? The opposite of what we need to do. We want to add goal scoring, and they add some more grit. We want toughness, but we also need to score goals. It's embarrassing to have a goalie like Carey Price, and like you said, to just waste him. I am pissed off, Ian. I was itching the whole show so far to talk about this, and I'm just fired up. It does not make any sense. If I was Carey Price, a really nice guy, after the game, I would go out to an interview and literally just say, we just couldn't score. It's not his fault at all. I was so mad yesterday, Ian. I saw a couple things on Facebook, Twitter, social media, all over, talking about how did Carey Price play? Did he get out goaltended? Montreal. Are you kidding me? Are you actually kidding me? I mean, I'm a Montreal fan. Any Montreal fans that think Carey was the problem, they can just get on the boat and leave. They can literally just hop the train and get off the Montreal fan base because it's unbelievable. I mean, I'm embarrassed to be a Montreal fan to have someone else that goes for the same team as me say that was Carey Price's fault. Max Pacioretty not performing, just everybody not stepping up. Even Radulov wasn't utilized very well and didn't get himself in a position to score. Now, here's one rant I'm going to finish on here, and it might be a touchy subject. PK Subban, Shea Weber trade, Ian, okay? Last playoffs, PK Subban, numerous blasts from the point, top corner, bottom side of the net, through the 5-hole, off a deflection. Okay, you can say whatever you want. PK performed on the power play, okay? And sure, sometimes he was a little bit too offensive. Shea Weber couldn't hit the net sometimes. He's at the point for this Montreal Canadiens team. I mean, you said he played well in this series defensively. I hope you weren't talking about offensively, because when he has the hardest shot in the league, how can he not be putting pucks at the net? It doesn't make any sense. He has to be counted on to score. He has to be counted on to at least get pucks on net. When you have a shot that fast, Ian, any hockey player will tell you, you put it low. The deflection will come. A rebound will come. They just couldn't get anything going, and it's flat out embarrassing. Do I think the New York Rangers will do well in the second round? No. Am I just saying that because I'm a mad Montreal fan? No. I simply think that just because Canadians, they were more aggressive, and they simply just outworked the Canadians. I don't think they did anything too fantastic. You look at that goal they scored in Game 5, Ian. I don't know if you watch Coach's Corner here in Canada. Don Cherry touched on it perfectly. When you're a defenseman and a team is on the breakaway, stick out of the way. Zuccarello literally just walked right into that puck. It deflected off, I believe it might have been Petrie's stick, or I don't think Emelin was just, I believe it was actually Markov. Off Markov's stick, slid right through, and the defenseman, I think it was Jordy Ben, once again, who also cost the Habs with a bad penalty earlier on in that game. He was clueless because the puck slid right by him, and Zuccarello taps it in. I mean, do I think this New York Rangers team was skilled throughout this whole playoffs? No. Were they able to, get pucks deep, cycle a puck around and score? Sure. Well, no, absolutely not, Ian.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was pretty safe to say who the better Ben brother is after watching that series. It's not Jordy. Let's put it that way. That was a tough series. That was rough. That was absolutely rough watching that guy play defense, try to play defense. That was, they brought him in. That turned out to be a disaster that blew up in Marc Bergevin's face. Dwight King. How is Dwight King going to help you score a goal? Come on now. Let's get serious here. You know what? Claude Julien, too, he does not allow his team to breathe offensively. It's all about get back, be in defensive posture, be in good defensive position in your own zone, and don't you dare think about showing a little sliver of creativity and ingenuity on the offensive side of the ice. I mean, it's the year that Boston won the Stanley Cup with Claude Julien as the head coach. They were not a juggernaut offensively. They scored just enough to get by. They were great defensively, and Tim Thomas had the year of his life, a year that he never, ever had again in order to win that Stanley Cup for the Boston Bruins in net. That's why they won it. It wasn't because Claude Julien had a great offensive mind all of a sudden. He's not had that. I don't think it was a good fit. This is a Montreal team that's crying out for offense, crying out for high elite level skill to be added to the Galchenyuks and Pacioretty's. Those are really the only two guys that stand out as big time guys you can count on offensively for this team. They needed to add to that, and they didn't. And Claude Julien's not a guy that's going to help you get there. He's not. Because he's going to be all about get back, be in your own zone. Don't try to push the pace. Don't try to pinch the defenseman to keep pucks alive in the offensive zone. It's all about stay back. Just be in good defensive position. Don't attack too much. It's all about stay back. We'll pounce on their mistake. We won't allow you to show any creativity. He's a good coach defensively, and he coaches a great penalty kill. His teams always have a good penalty kill. But he just does not allow his team any sort of freedom offensively, and it drives me nuts about Claude Julien. And that's why I think he's a bad fit. And of course, again, they want the coach that's French Canadian, that's going to be able to speak French to the media. It's ridiculous, that's dinosaur thinking, but it's never ever going to change here for the Montreal Canadiens. It's never going to be about getting the best coach that's out there. It's going to be about a guy that fits. Can he speak French? Can he talk to the French media en français, s'il vous plaît? Oui, do all that stuff. He's got to be able to do that, and that's why they
Way to make us Canadians look good, Ian. Nice accent there, buddy.
That's right. Oh, it's that French class I took 20 years ago in high school, probably. Or not that long, actually, 15 years. But anyway, yeah, I mean, it's just one of those situations where Montreal, again, unable to find the back of the net, and it cost them. I'm going to go about both of these last two series quickly. Pittsburgh, Columbus, really Pittsburgh, the better team throughout that series for the most part. Columbus had some moments, but again, Marc-Andre Fleury stepping in for Matt Murray, very impressive in between the pipes for the Pittsburgh Penguins, no question about it. Had a very, very good series for them. And then the Ottawa Senators and Boston Bruins. I want to really focus on this one more. Great effort by the Ottawa Senators. Great effort by the Boston Bruins, too. I mean, you can't imagine in the playoffs how difficult it is to win games when you are down three starting defensemen. And the Boston Bruins in that series had no Torrey Krug, who was a massive loss, massive blow to that team. No Adam McQuaid for multiple games. Brandon Carlo was out for the entire series. Three starting defensemen, that's tough to overcome. And it finally caught up to the Boston Bruins in that series. And what a story the Ottawa Senators are writing. And this is starting to feel like this team's got a little karma and a little magic in them. Maybe a longer run than maybe I even expected in them. The Ottawa Senators, with the Clark MacArthur story, coming back from all the major injuries, the concussion. Of course, we know what happened to him in training camp that kept him out for most of the season. How he's come in here, despite all the injuries, coming back and scoring big goals for this team, including the overtime series winner yesterday. So impressive. Erik Karlsson's this is as good a leader as I've ever seen out of him in all his years with Ottawa. He is vocal on the bench. He's trying to get his teammates going, trying to pump up the bench all the time, talking to his teammates, trying to communicate better. He's showing leadership qualities in this series, Erik Karlsson, that I had never, ever seen out of him before, and he played like it on the ice. He had a tremendous series. This blue line, Phaneuf's had a great series, about as well as I've seen him play in a long time. Cody Ceci, Chris Weidman, Mark Mathot, the old veteran. A very solid performance from that Ottawa blue line. Craig Anderson, that's another amazing story, playing as well as he is with his wife battling cancer. His wife was in the TD Garden crowd yesterday watching that game. The Craig Anderson story with his wife battling cancer, Clark MacArthur's incredible comeback from multiple injuries, including that concussion. It just has that sense of when the Rangers a few years ago, Marty St. Louis' mother passed away that year in the playoffs. They rallied around that. They went to the Stanley Cup final before they got beat by the Los Angeles Kings. The Ottawa's got these little feel-good stories going on now with this team right now. Carlson being a leader, MacArthur back from all the injuries he's had, Craig Anderson playing as well as he is with his wife battling through an awful cancer scare. It's starting to feel like, hey, this Ottawa team is rallying together, playing well, playing for each other, playing for their teammates. They're a dangerous team. New York better be ready. I'm starting to like what I'm seeing from this Ottawa team. And that series against Boston was mispriced from the beginning. Boston was laying minus 150 or higher at home in every game in the series, and they lost every home game in that series. A complete botch job by the odds makers. They botched it. They completely butchered that series completely. It was mispriced. It was totally in the wrong price range in terms of the game-by-game prices and in terms of the series price. Boston never should have been laying that kind of price. They were almost a 2-1 favorite when the series price opened on that series. So kudos to Ottawa, and now they face the New York Rangers in the second round.
Yeah, definitely hats off to the Ottawa Senators. Like you said, Ian, I think they have that magic going right now. They're flowing. They've got a lot of good stories going for them. And how about MacArthur, playing an exceptional Mark Stone. I'm loving Craig Anderson right now, though. When you have a team that has no trouble really scoring like the Ottawa Senators do, it's important that you have that the back end, the blue line that the Ottawa Senators have been having, but also the excellent goaltending from Craig Anderson. And it's just been impressive. He looks very calm back there, Ian. Doesn't look to ever get panicked, doesn't give up too many juicy rebounds. And I think what's going to benefit them heading into the next round is that they're also a tough team. They're also a team that can be gritty. They can be tough. They can lay some body checks, and they'll play that kind of game. But they can also score high goals. And New York Rangers, they're gritty, and that's what benefited them as well against the weak Montreal Canadiens. If I can just get that one more point in about the Canadians there. But the Rangers, they're just a little bit too, like you said about Claude Julien. They'll grind you, wear you down, and then try and get that 1 week goal on you. I think this Ottawa Senators team played exceptional against the Bruins. I was in favor of the Bruins. I thought they should have been a little bit less of a favorite, but I still liked the Bruins. But I think the Senators should really take over that series. It's going to be a task at hand for them. But with the way they're playing, with the way their blue line was looking, with the way Carlson stepped up, not only just as a leader, but as a defensive defenseman, Ian, he's finally playing both ends. He's not just worried about scoring, but he'll take care of someone that's on a fast break or a breakaway and turn that into offense. He'll cause a turnover and then send someone on a breakaway. That's what you look for a great defenseman. So all in all, I'm impressed with this Ottawa Senators team.
Yeah, definitely impressed. And you're right, Erik Karlsson, when he gets that puck, the first pass is always right on the tape. It's incredible how accurate he is with that first pass out of the zone. Quick transition. Whenever Erik Karlsson's on the ice, the transition time from defense to offense is remarkable. It's like lightning fast that he gets that puck up there to his forwards. And I'll tell you what, Ottawa taking on the New York Rangers would definitely not count them out. And it's funny, as we wrap up our first round discussion, we talked about 18 overtime games in the first round. It's fantastic. I don't know if anyone believes in superstition, any of our viewers out there, but I got to bring this up because Saturday I'm at Buddy's house watching the game. We have an overtime game that day, Minnesota, St. Louis. Friday night, I'm at my favorite local bar in town watching, NHL playoffs, NBA, little baseball as well. Both games go to overtime that night on Friday. The Washington-Toronto game, the Ottawa-Boston game, both games go to overtime. Last Monday night, when we have all 4 Stanley Cup playoff games going into overtime. Guess where I was that night? Not at home. I was at a bar again watching it, and all 4 games go to overtime. So apparently I will be doing hockey fans around the globe a favor if I get my ass up out of the house every night for the second round here and go to a bar or a friend's house, whatever, get out to watch the games. Because if I do that, apparently we're going to have overtime games flying up left and right everywhere in these NHL playoffs. It's absolutely uncanny, but I'm not exactly a superstition guy, I'll be honest. I think it's purely coincidence. with those 3 nights in particular that happened. I'm not one of those people that I win 4 bets in a row, and each day I put my socks on at the same time every day, 9 a.m. It's not like I'm going to make a point, I got to put my socks on 9 a.m. every freaking day. It's not, I don't think that way, but I think it's purely coincidental. But that is funny to see how that ended up happening. Second round, Andrew, let's get to it with series prices here with the second round before we wrap up this show. Let's go in rotation order. Pinnacle, I'm looking at it right now. Nashville, St. Louis. We've got the Nashville Predators, minus 124 series favorite. St. Louis at plus 112 currently in that series. I'm not going to have a play on it. I think Nashville is going to advance in a long 6 or 7 game series, but it's priced about right with Nashville as the slight favorite in the series. But the thing is with Nashville, how much of it was them and how much of it was Chicago? That I'm still trying to evaluate in my own mind. So even though I think Nashville's going to win this series, if it turns out that what happened in the first round with Nashville is more Chicago just not having anything physically or emotionally to offer in terms of what they've been able to offer in years past, they're just spent. They just have nothing in their tank. Then maybe St. Louis does have a better chance here in this series. But if it was more great Nashville and what they were doing positively as to why they beat Chicago, then I like them in that series. And I believe Nashville was really good in that series. I'm not willing to say it was all Chicago just not having it. Nashville was good in that series. I think it's going to be tough. And Jake Allen, stonewall in that first round, if he's capable of stealing that series for St. Louis. But I'm going to side with Nashville in a long and probably great series.
I fully agree. And I'm sitting down yesterday thinking to myself, Hawks are really that bad? Or were the Nashville Predators really just that good? And I think there's a fine line right in the middle there somewhere, Ian, where it's at both points. And the Chicago Blackhawks team definitely didn't produce, but I'll tell you one thing: the Nashville Predators did shut them down, and that nobody out there can say that this Nashville Predators team did not do a good job of shutting down the All-Stars and shutting down really the offense of the Chicago Blackhawks team. With the back end on the blue line this Predators team has that can play defensively but can also come up in the rush. Every time I watch a Nashville Predators game, I see Ryan Ellis do something. I see PK Subban doing PK, turning defense into offense. And once again, to answer a question that was asked a little while ago, I really do like Pekka Rinne. I'm impressed with him. And the follow-up question to that was, do I think they have what it takes to go all the way? Those two questions correlate together. Rinne will take them as far as they're going to go, in my opinion, Ian. And I'm a big fan of the Predators right now. I'm impressed with what they did over the Blackhawks, and I'm going to take them in a hard-fought series. It'll go deep, like you said, but I'm liking the Predators as well.
All right, next up, we're going to look at the Edmonton Oilers, Anaheim Ducks, the other Western Conference semifinal series in the second round. We got Anaheim a minus 133 series favorite at Pinnacle, Edmonton plus 120 at this point in time. It's probably in the right price range. I'd had Edmonton as a series price bet first round because I thought they had definitive edges over an older San Jose team, a San Jose team that did not play well down the stretch. That's not going to be the case here against Anaheim. Anaheim's got home ice advantage. They've been playing much better, obviously, late in the regular season and here in the playoffs than San Jose did. There's not going to be that discrepancy with speed and age, particularly with Anaheim like it was for San Jose with Edmonton. But I will say this, the Anaheim defense, especially in their bottom 4 pairings, Bieksa in particular is one of those guys that stands out. You can make them turn, go after the puck, and you can beat some of these guys with speed. And I think that's something that Edmonton is going to be able to do a little bit more effectively than Calgary was able to do. And Cam Talbot in net was terrific in that series against San Jose, but John Gibson equally good for the Anaheim Ducks against Calgary. So it's a fantastic series. This definitely has 7 games written all over it. I'm cheering for Edmonton because I've got my Western Conference and Stanley Cup futures on them. I think they can win this series. I think it's going to be close. I think there's very little separating these two teams. And when you look at it, Edmonton did play Anaheim pretty tough in the regular season. They've got a shot. I'm going to say Oilers in 7. It's not as confident a prediction for me as it was picking Edmonton against San Jose, but I'm going to believe in this young team. And that was a coming of age. Them being able to go on the road in Game 6, beat San Jose after they lost their 7-0 the last time they played there, get the job done. Edmonton's growing up, and if they get that same kind of performance and they get just a little bit more from their big guns, they are going to need McDavid to be even better. They're going to need Eberle to get going. Eberle didn't have a great series by any stretch. Nugent Hopkins got to be heard from a little bit more, but if they get those guys on board, they're going to be a handful for the Ducks.
I guess I'll just kind of finish or continue with where you left off there with Nugent Hopkins, Eberle. We've got Milan Lucic. This is a team that does have depth in, and when I say that, I don't even mean third and fourth line guys. I mean, they have people that are all-stars in their own way, people that can come out and shine for this team. You're talking about how you think that this isn't as much of an older team they're facing. I still think they have a lot more stamina, definitely a lot more speed. And we're going to see an Edmonton Oilers team this series where during the regular season and the first round, we saw a lot of breakaway opportunities and settled in and passed the puck around for a while. I really think they're going to get pucks deep and cycle things through, try and tire out this team, really wear them down, and then get a good opportunity. Eberle, Nugent Hopkins, and McDavid, they're going to use their quick speed and the chemistry this team has. Let's talk about the chemistry of this Edmonton Oilers team for a second here. Just the way they all work together and how the lines have actually been meshed around a couple times in the past couple of weeks, and yet these players have been able to and make good use of whatever they're getting. So I actually like the Edmonton Oilers in 6 here. I think they're only going to continue. Last series wasn't the best series for Connor McDavid. He wasn't able to find space. I think he'll come out firing in this series, and the Edmonton Oilers will look even better in the second round than they did in the first round.
All right, moving on. Let's go to the Eastern Conference now. Their 2 semifinal series, New York Rangers, Ottawa Senators. We've got the Rangers, a -143 series favorite, Ottawa +129. And this is the series. If I had to make a series price best bet, this is it. We're looking at Ottawa getting the plus price here in this series against the New York Rangers. Listen, the New York Rangers had a solid series against Montreal. Henrik Lundqvist was great, but unlike Claude Julien, Guy Boucher can play a 1-3-1 defensive system, which is what he employs in Ottawa, and he can still let his offensive players try to create and do something in the other team's zone. And we've saw that with Ottawa. He doesn't restrain his goal scorers. He's going to let them be creative with the puck in the other zone and still be able to play that stringent defensive game. Guy Boucher is allowing his team to do that, unlike Julien. And Ottawa, we got good performances from a lot of their big weapons in that first round. Bobby Ryan had a great series. Kyle Turris scored big goals. Mark Stone had a solid series. The blue line was fantastic for this team. Clark MacArthur, of course, coming back from all those injuries with a great series with clutch goals. The power play finally got going late in that series against Boston, against a Boston team that's very good on the penalty kill. Let's be honest. The Rangers played a team that couldn't put the puck in that first round against the Montreal Canadiens. That's not going to be the case here. Lundqvist was great. Lundqvist going to be facing a team that can just flat out put the puck in the net more than the Montreal Canadiens can. Let's be honest. Ottawa can do that. So you look at that. You look at Craig Anderson, who's played solid in these playoffs. The Rangers still at times have had sloppy play in their own zone. Mark Stahl's not been quite as good this season. Dan Girardi, I think, has really declined in his play from a few years ago when he was a really strong defenseman for the Rangers. You can get after some of these Rangers defensemen, and I think Ottawa's going to be able to do that in this series. There's not a lot that stands out to me series price-wise with these early second-round series prices. This one does. Definitely. I have play of the day videos here at SBR. If this was a play of the segment, play of the show, for me, this is it. Ottawa +129 series price against the New York Rangers, and they've got this little karma going. MacArthur back from injuries. Anderson playing hard, playing well, despite his wife battling cancer. Nice little stories going on. Rallying the team together. They're playing with that emotion. They're playing with that heart, and I think it carries them to a series win here.
Great stuff there, Ian, and fully agree with the play of the segment. Oftentimes, when we do stuff like that, you kind of want you and I to have different picks, but if there was to be a play of the segment, I would agree with the Ottawa Senators as well. This team can score goals, but they also have the back end blue line plus the goalie of Craig Anderson. And I think the New York Rangers are just going to have too much of a tough time scoring goals. And Ottawa Senators team that clogs up the neutral zone kind of traps you there, and they're off to the races. So the best thing about this Ottawa Senators team, like you said about how Guy Boucher lets the players go, the blue line, the two defensemen kind of just stay back, and all the forwards just rush up, and they work their asses off. And that's how they score their goals. They don't score a lot of pretty goals on the breakaway, or a lot of flashy goals where they're deking the pants off the goalie. They're working hard down there and finding good spots to score. So I think this is a mismatch. I think the New York Rangers, unless they get a lot of scoring production, if they can get off to the first period and get some goals or one or two, get a good start, absolutely. But right now, in my opinion, this is just too much. Henrik Lundqvist will have to play out of his mind in order for the New York Rangers to really stay with the Ottawa Senators.
All right, we are in agreement. Ottawa at a plus price, and how can you not? How can you resist the plus price? I mean, it's a great price too. I'm surprised the Rangers are favored as much as they were. I expected this to be priced closer to a pick'em than it is. The Rangers, they're making them a moderate favorite. I don't agree with that. I think Ottawa, especially at that price, worth a look from a series price perspective. All right, let's wrap it up. Final series, Pittsburgh, Washington. It's probably the one everybody's excited about the most. They're all going to be great series, but you've got the star quality. You got Crosby, Malkin on one side, Ovechkin, Backstrom on the other side, and you've got the Washington Capitals, despite getting everything thrown at them, including the kitchen sink by the Toronto Maple Leafs in the first round. The Washington Capitals, a minus 121 series price favorite over Pittsburgh, who are plus 110 at this point in time. I know, Andrew, you like Pittsburgh. You've already said that. You think they're going to win this series. Washington, maybe some of the wear and tear building on them after Toronto put them through a gut-wrenching, hard-fought 6 games. I'm not ready yet to jump on Pittsburgh just quite quickly yet in this series. I'm not laying any series price with Washington. There's no way, no how. Pittsburgh at plus 110 probably does have some value, but you got an avenging Washington team from last year. And you've got a Washington team that in the last 2 games of this series against Toronto, I had always questioned them fragile mentally and with their fragile state. It's usually when things go wrong in the playoffs for them, they've gone off the rails. They were pushed hard by Toronto, and we didn't see them panic. We didn't see them flinch. Every time Toronto's got that goal from Austin Matthews, and the very next shift after that Austin Matthews goal, which was that crazy bounce off the stanchion, Washington came right back at Toronto with a couple great shifts in a row, got some chances, and then sure enough, a minute or two later, tied that game 1-1. They didn't panic. I mean, they kept playing their game. They stuck to it. The mental toughness side of this Washington Capitals team, based on what I saw the last 2 games, it's better now than it was last year or any of the recent seasons that they've had these early playoff flameouts. Now, we're talking about a Washington team that in the Ovechkin era has never been out of the second round. That is the ultimate hurdle that they are trying to climb here and overcome against the Pittsburgh Penguins. But you look at the season series, Washington, it was 2-2, but the 2 Washington losses in the season series against Pittsburgh were overtime/shootout losses. So, they played pretty well against Pittsburgh during the regular season. The one thing that concerns me about Pittsburgh here is, their blue line at times was running around against Columbus, giving pucks away. Columbus didn't capitalize on them because Columbus was putrid offensively down the stretch, and it carried over for a big part of that series against Pittsburgh. Washington will be able to capitalize a little bit on some of these times when Pittsburgh's gotten hemmed in their own zone, and Marc-Andre Fleury had to bail them out at times against Columbus. First of all, if they get hemmed in to that extent against Washington, they're going to pay for it a lot more. Number 2, is Marc-Andre Fleury going to play as well as he did against Columbus? This is another guy that's been inconsistent over the years. And although he's done well in filling in for an injured Matt Murray, can he keep it up for a second round? So it's a tough series. I can make good cases for both teams in this series. I think the value's there with Pittsburgh. But I saw enough of warning signs and some just small under-the-radar red flags that may not show up for a series where they still won in 5 games, but it showed up to me in the details of their game defensively. And if those details aren't cleaned up a little bit, Washington can take advantage, but should be a great series.
Yeah, like you said, I already touched on this series a little bit, so I won't take too long here, but I will say a little bit different of a scenery change here as last year, Marc-Andre Fleury goes down, in comes Matt Murray. This time Matt Murray goes down, in comes Marc-Andre Fleury. So a little bit of a mixed match there, and we'll see what the Pittsburgh Penguins can do. But like I said, the Pittsburgh Penguins are not the same as Toronto Maple Leafs. Okay, a lot of people are giving the Maple Leafs a lot of credit right now, and they deserve that. Ian, you and I were talking earlier on about the credit that the Toronto Maple Leafs deserve. But if the Capitals are used to the way this team was playing and they head into the Pittsburgh Penguins, I don't think they're going to know what hit them. We've got a question here from Jake asking us about the injuries of the Penguins and how serious we think this Washington Capitals team will be. Well, Jake, my only answer for you will be Washington Capitals team went through a lot tougher of a series than the Pittsburgh Penguins did. Not to say the Pittsburgh Penguins weren't challenged, but Penguins got a lot more rest in. We'll just say that for now. And I don't think it will hurt them too much. Penguins can produce, but they can also play defensive as well. Wrap it up. I'm on the Pittsburgh Penguins.
Yeah, I mean, the plus price, I'm a little surprised. It was, Capitals is not just a little favorite, but, minus 120. I expected minus 110 or less in that range. But Washington, getting a little bit of respect here in this series. And our viewer there that mentioned the Pittsburgh Penguin injuries makes a great point. I mean, Chris Letang is not a small injury. Chris Kunitz is not a small injury. And Carl Hagelin's been out for a while as well for this Pittsburgh team. Remember that HBK line last year, which Hagelin was a part of. With Bonino and Kunitz, how good they were for this Pittsburgh team last season. So, again, those injuries didn't show up against Columbus, but now their depth on the blue line, now their depth up front is going to be tested a little bit more by this Washington Capitals team. Again, if Washington loses this series, I'm not going to say I'm shocked. I mean, I'm not. I mean, we're talking about a team that hasn't been out in the second round in the Alex Ovechkin era. I mean, that goes back 11, 12 years. But I also think that Pittsburgh is going to have to up their game a lot more than they did against Columbus. I thought there were too many issues with them defensively at times in that series. Columbus did outshoot them in a few games in that series too, so they got to clean that up definitely if they're going to advance past the Washington Capitals. But you got star power. You've got two teams that have been the class of that conference now for multiple years now. It's going to be a phenomenal series. I can't wait to watch it, Penguins and Capitals. All right. We've gone a solid hour, but we've touched upon everything we've needed to. That's going to wrap up this edition of the Ice Guys NHL Stanley Cup Playoffs betting show here at Sportsbook Review. Hope you enjoyed the show. Thank you to all of our viewers for tuning in. You're the reason that makes this show go. Your interest and your viewership. Hope you join us again next Monday. Andrew McInnes, thanks for joining me as always, co-hosting, my wingman here, I guess you could say, on the show. Ice Guys, join us next Monday. We'll be right in the middle of the second round. We'll be breaking it all down again from a betting perspective. The NHL Stanley Cup playoffs continue. Enjoy the games this week, and good luck.